Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're taking a real AQA GCSE Biology exam question, and we're going to completely pick it apart. We're not just finding the answers. We're using the official mark scheme to figure out exactly what an examiner wants to see to give you those top marks.
So here's the big question, right? How do you go from a decent answer to one that's, well, perfect? The secret isn't just knowing your biology. It's about knowing what the examiner has on their checklist. And today, we've got our hands on their playbook. And this is it. Our guide for today is the official AQA mark scheme. This is literally the document examiners use to grade your paper. So you can think of it as our secret weapon for crafting the perfect answer. Okay, here's the plan. We're going to break down every single part of question 4, starting with plant tissues, then plant transport, cell structure, the big one on active transport, and finally specialized cells. After all that, we'll wrap up with the most important takeaways. So are you ready to think like an examiner? Let's dive in. First up, we've got question 4.1. This is one of those classic complete the sentences questions. It's really designed as a quick check of your core knowledge about plant tissues. So here it is. You've got 3 sentences to complete. One about the tissue with the most chloroplasts, one about the tissue with lots of air spaces, and one about the tissue that can differentiate. Just take a second. What would you put in those blanks? And boom, here are the answers, straight from the mark scheme. The first one is palisade, which totally makes sense, right? It's where most of the photosynthesis happens, so of course it's packed with chloroplasts. The second is spongy mesophyll. All those air spaces are there for gas exchange. And the third is meristem, which are basically the plant's stem cells. But look at that note at the bottom. This is absolutely crucial. The answers must be in this order. You could have all the right words, but if they're in the wrong spots, you get 0 marks. It's all about precision. All right, let's keep the momentum going. Next, we have questions 4.2 and 4.3. These are 2 quick-fire, 1-mark questions, and they're both about the plant's transport system. This is all about knowing those specific keywords. Okay, so this question asks for a substance that makes xylem tissue stronger. What's that key structural word they're hunting for? And the answer is just one word, lignin. It's the super tough polymer that gives the xylem its rigid strength. Think of it like this. If cellulose is the steel rebar, lignin is the concrete poured around it. And that's exactly why the examiner is looking for this specific word. The mark scheme is crystal clear. Only lignin gets the point. Okay, next up, we're moving from the xylem over to the phloem. The question wants the name of the process that moves all those sugars around. And the magic word here is translocation. See, this is more than just diffusion. The mark scheme demands this exact term because it describes the active movement of sugars from where they're made, the source, like the leaves, to where they're needed, the sinks, like the roots or growing tips. Using translocation shows you really get it. Now we're on to question 04.4. Now this question actually referred to a diagram, a figure of a phloem cell. For copyright reasons, we can't show it here, but that's okay. We can still figure out the key piece of information the examiners were testing. The question was simple. Name part Y in figure 3. So even without the picture, the mark scheme tells us exactly what AQA expects a student to be able to spot in a diagram like this. And there it is. The answer they were looking for was the permanent vacuole. So the big takeaway here is that you're expected to be able to identify all the major subcellular parts of a specialized cell from a diagram. Even without seeing the image, we know the vacuole was the target. All right, time for the big one. Question 04.5 is worth a whopping 5 marks. This is where you really need to connect different biological ideas together into a coherent story, and it's all about active transport. So, the question is, explain how subcellular structures help to move dissolved sugars against a concentration gradient. Let's pull out the keywords. We've got subcellular structures, move dissolved sugars, and the massive clue, against a concentration gradient. That last phrase should be setting off alarm bells in your head, pointing directly to one process. And this lays it out perfectly. To get all 5 marks, you need to tell a step-by-step story. First, you name the key structure, the mitochondria. Second, what do? Aerobic respiration. Third, what's the point of respiration? It releases energy. Fourth, you connect that energy back to the question. It's needed to move sugar against the concentration gradient. And finally, what's that process called? Active transport. See how each point flows logically to the next? That's a perfect 5-mark answer. We're on the home stretch now, just the last part of question 4 to go. This one looks at cell differentiation, specifically how phloem cells get adapted for their very important job. The question asks you to describe just one structural change that happens when a regular cell turns into a specialized phloem cell. This is a direct test of your knowledge of cell adaptations.
And look at this. The mark scheme gives you a whole menu of correct answers for just one mark. You could have said it loses its nucleus, or its mitochondria, or even just say it loses subcellular structures. Or you could have mentioned that its end walls get perforated, forming those sieve plates. And why are all of these right? Because every single one of these changes helps to clear out the cell, creating a hollow, open tube for sugars to flow through easily. Any one of those points gets you the mark because it shows you understand that link between structure and function. So, we've made it through all of question 4, we've taken a peek inside the examiner's playbook, so what are the big lessons we've learned here?
Well, first, using those precise scientific terms like lignin and translocation is non-negotiable. They are the keys that unlock the marks. Second, for those bigger multi-mark questions, you need to build a logical story, step by step, just like we did for active transport. Third, you've got to know the jobs of key players like the mitochondria inside and out. And finally, understanding how cells are specially adapted for their function is a massive theme that comes up again and again.
You see, when you start thinking like an examiner, you start seeing the questions in a whole new light. We've just unlocked the playbook for this part of plant biology. So the only question left is, which topic's playbook should we break down next?